قوم بزاف يتلاق ترى يتمنى الصغمن غين تمين موت ما يدع لا حول ولا قوة حي السندانيتين الله يتمنى عايز الحار دي كان دي بعد شنو شحال من انت ما عرف رمضان
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we have here in the border of Spain and Morocco where 2 dozen of African migrants tried to jump the wall to go on the Spain or European side. And from this event, there was 20 of them killed. There's another picture online which showing the burying or the graves of 20 people, Africans. And the reason why I'm showing this and talking about this, because this is something else in the African American Muslim community that we need to talk about. It's the anti-Black sentiments from the Arabs. We can hear and we can see in the video of the Moroccans killing and beating and throwing African bodies on top of other bodies. Some of the bodies are dead. Some of the bodies are alive. And there's in the video, you can see some of the Spaniard police doing the same and putting cuffs on the people from the mass of people who look dead, putting cuffs on some of them who appears to be alive. And you can't tell the difference. But the confirmation from the 20 graves built, 20 graves, digged, we can understand that 20 from the 2 dozen died, 23 altogether. Someone said or expressed a deep shock over the death at the Spain and Moroccan border. And I'm reading from Al Jazeera newspaper. It should be over the death at the Moroccan and Spain border, because the Africans were not on Spaniard soil. They were on the Moroccan soil trying to go over to Spain, which means that both sides, the Spaniard side and the Moroccan side, took part in this incident, which both sides afflict this upon Africans. There's a long history between the Arabs and the Europeans of enslaving Black Africans. And a lot of the African American Muslim, when we get at this talking point on history, we try to block out, we try to ignore like none of these things exist historically. So we will ignore these factors. But it's a reality that Arabs and Europeans systemically enslaved Black Africans, non-Muslims, and unfortunately, Muslims, Africans, they enslaved. Now, it's very true that we understand that the Spaniards, we already know their racism. But we have to talk about the trans-Saharan slave trade and the Arab slave trade, where they enslave millions of Africans, the East Africans and the North Africans. Matter of fact, the Arab enslaved Africans and enriched many of the Arab countries were enriched due to their African enslavement of Black Africans. And this is a long history. Matter of fact, there's books on it. And because of the Arab slave trade of Africans and enslaving of Africans, the Europeans learned from the Arabs about the enslavement of Africans. The only difference between the Arab enslavement of Africans is that the Europeans made it into a monopoly. They made it into a franchise. And their version of enslavement of Africans were far worse than the Arab enslavement of Africans. But it let us know that the sentiment for African peoples exists from the Europeans and from Arabs. We have a lot of our African American brothers, Muslim brothers, who don't want to accept this. And how I know? I used to be from amongst them. We're in denial about our own roots as being Black in America. We're also in the denial of who we are. We're confused about who we are. So many of us, when we convert to Islam, we take on other identities and cultures, thinking that these other identities, whether it's the Arab Muslims and their customs, or the Desi Muslims and their customs, or the European Muslims and their custom, or the Asian Muslim in their custom, we take on their custom and we think it's Islam and this is going to replace our heritage as Blacks. Oh, no, 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 no. And Islam doesn't teach that. That have to take on other people's customs and culture. So the African American, due to his mindset of self-hate, they will look at these type of news and when they make all the excuses to say racism against Blacks does not exist with Arabs. Even one part of me wants to say it was the Spaniards who did it and not the Moroccans. I've been to Morocco. I have Moroccan friends. You have another brother say, oh, I have a Moroccan wife. They don't treat me this way. Well, these Africans that you see here were being killed and abused, was trying to get that lavish life in Europe. Their treatment is how the Arabs see Black Africans. The difference between you, Negro, and the Africans killed in this video is that you have a Western passport. You have an American passport. You have a Canadian passport. You have a UK British passport. So they don't see you the same, because when they marry you with this Western passport, it's going to get them into Europe and get them into the Western world, like America and Canada and Britain. But this is how they treat other Africans and see them. And unfortunately, these Africans, when we see on the ground, best believe majority of them are Muslim. Best believe majority of them Africans are Black African Muslims. That's how the Arabs treat Africans when they don't have a Western passport. They are a nigger. They are a Zenji. They are Samira. They are Sudani. They are Samra, Sudani, Abd, Abid. That's how they see our African brothers and Africans in general. Now, the European, the Spaniards, they already have a long history in enslaving Black Africans. They have a long history, unfortunately. But the Arabs have a longer history in enslaving Black Africans. And in the African American Muslim community, we don't want to talk about these things. We shy away from this conversation. We even shy away from social issues going on in the Black community where we live. We're trying to use Islam as an escapism not to deal with our black social issues where we live in the United States of America. For sure, you're going to ignore and find an incident like this not important and say, well, that's not me. That's not my peoples. That's how they see you. The only difference between me and these black Africans is that some of us, we have a Western passport. So in this news report, it's saying that 24 of peoples, Africans, were trying to get over the wall. And in the mayhem are trying to prevent them from getting over the wall, these people were beat to death by the Moroccan and Spaniard side. They was beaten to death. This is how you treat refugees. The Arabs treating the African refugees the same way the Europeans treat African refugees. And unfortunately, Morocco's in Africa. SubhanAllah. Morocco's North Africa. It's part of Africa. And within Africa, being from North Africa, Morocco, this is how they see other Africans who are black. You know, unfortunately, Morocco has a lot of black citizens. Either they're Berber, or they're Arab, or they mix, or they're Africans, descendants who were slaves of the Arabs and gave them their freedom when the Moroccan government decided to free and end slavery. So unfortunately, we have black Africans and Moroccans who are African descendants, and they will look at these fellow Africans and have no pity for them, even though these Africans are Muslim, because they will see that they're Moroccan. No, if you're black Moroccan, if you're not Berber and you're black Arab or not, most likely if you're Moroccan, you're mixed with black blood, African blood, black African blood. Moroccans own slaves. Moroccan Arabs own slaves. What do you think happened to the slaves in Morocco when they freed when the Arabs freed the Moroccan slaves, African slaves? What do you think, they went to other parts of Africa? No, they're right there in Moroccan. You look just like me. You got big nose like me and big lips like me. You got my kinky hair. You got my skin tone and maybe even darker, and got my lips. That's a whole nother scenario. But just looking at this incident, we have to start talking about these things in our community. Let's play it one more time. Another thing for the Africans who are from Africa and they look down at African Americans, this is how the world see you as an African. What we see in this clip here, for all these Africans who come to the US and they look down at Black Americans, look how the world will look and treat you. Look how the world, the Europeans, especially you Africans who come from different parts of Africa, especially Muslim countries or not, and you look down at African Americans, look how the world treats you because you're a skin color. You get treated the same way as I get treated in America. There was recently a prison riot in America where the inmates died recently, 2 or 3 days ago. You get the same treatment as we get in the US. The same treatment. But unfortunately, when you look into the history of the Atlantic slave trade, the Europeans enslaving Africans, and the Arabs enslaving Africans, who are the father in enslaving Africans. When you look deep into the scenario, you have to ask ourselves, how did Black people get in this situation? We have to ask ourselves, how do we get into these situations? It comes from self-hate. Because the first people to enslave Africans, unfortunately, is other Africans. We are the first people to enslave each other. And you look at the reasons why we enslaved each other, from tribalism, wars, and tribalism. We enslaved each other out of self-hate. Then other non-Blacks, non-Africans came and seen this scenario, that the one who's supposed to be protecting each other or enslaving each other from the same race, they took advantage of it. And we can say, somebody could argue and say, well, the Arab Muslims, they enslaved other Arabs. Yes, they sure did. And they enslaved Europeans. They sure did. But the Arabs came to a level of understanding where they understood, for them to get further and more advanced, they have to stop enslaving themselves. Likewise, the Europeans enslaved each other. Just look at the history between Ireland and Britain. Europeans enslaved each other, but Europeans came to the sense of how to conquer the world, that they cannot enslave each other. So they start implementing codes. Likewise, the Arabs start implementing codes between other Arabs, and Europeans implemented codes of ethics without not enslaving each other, but the Africans continue to enslave each other. And likewise, the Arabs took advantage of that. Unfortunately, they used Islam to weaponize against Black Africans to enslave them. Unfortunately, the Europeans did the same thing. The Europeans didn't use religion to enslave them. Yes, they sure did. Matter of fact, they did use their religion to enslave Black peoples, which said that Blacks slavery be good for Black Africans. So yeah, they did weaponize their religion, Christianity, against Black Africans. And unfortunately, the Arab Muslims did the same way. They tried to use Islam to weaponize against Africans and to enslave Africans. And all we could say as Black peoples, we need a revolution. Our revolution needs to be an evolution of changing our mind setting. If we don't change our mind setting and remove the self-hate, because self-hate equates self-defeat. And when I look in this scenario, I have to ask myself, with this incident, why do Africans have to leave their country leave their continent, where it has much of the world's resources, to go to Europe. And Europe is taking the resources out of Africa. And the Africans got to leave this country that has resources to go into the European nation who is taking money and owning the resources in Africa. Look how idiotic that is. That's because of self-hate. Self-hate put Africans and blacks in this predicament. He has to leave his continent, Africa, where has a lot of the world resources, to go into weak Europe. Weak Europe, who's taking the resources from Africa and benefiting from it, and the African nations and leaders are selling their people out. Self-hate and self-defeat is real. And as long as blacks, we have this attitude and this mind setting, we are always going to be defeated, and we always going to be the bottom, save those who learning from these lessons and remove from themselves self-hate. If you like this channel and you'd like to see more, please like and share. And you want to donate, you could definitely hit me up at my Cash App which is in the description. Please like and share this video. Thank you.